The silence of the ocean was shattered in an instant. One moment, the sea seemed calm, almost peaceful, and the next, it erupted with fire and fury as steel giants of the United States Navy were ripped apart by invisible predators lurking beneath the waves. In the heart of the Pacific, Japanese torpedoes moved with deadly precision, silent killers seeking their marks. The crew had no idea what was coming. 1 second, they were patrolling confidently, the hum of the engines underfoot, the chatter of men filling the decks. The next, a deafening roar, explosions, and twisted metal told the story of carnage. Every torpedo that struck a ship was more than just destruction. It was a carefully calculated strike, a testament to years of engineering, strategy, and ruthless intent. The Japanese Navy had perfected their underwater arsenal in secret, creating torpedoes capable of traveling long distances with unprecedented accuracy. They were designed not merely to damage, but to annihilate. American sailors, despite their training and courage, faced a terrifying opponent that struck without warning. Radar and sonar could not always predict these attacks. The torpedoes moved faster than eyes could follow, slipping through water as quietly as a shadow in the night. It began with a routine patrol near the contested islands. The American fleet, confident in their technological superiority, had little suspicion that danger lurked beneath. Submarines, often underestimated, were now the tip of the spear for Japanese strategy. Underwater, the torpedoes awaited their release, silent, cold, and deadly. When they were fired, there was no hesitation, no turning back. The crew on the deck above might see a wake too late, hear the explosion only after it had torn through steel plating and hulls, sending men flying into the chaos of the sea. One of the most devastating encounters occurred during a surprise nighttime assault. The American ships sailed in formation, lights dimmed to avoid detection, their crews alert but unaware of the hunter beneath. Japanese submarines, skilled in stealth, had positioned themselves strategically, calculating speed, distance, and angle to maximize destruction. The first torpedo struck the lead cruiser. The blast shook the ship from bow to stern, shattering decks, rupturing fuel tanks, and igniting fires that spread like wildfire. Sailors were thrown into the water, some injured, others struggling to comprehend the horror unfolding. Within moments, the next torpedo found its target, a battleship in the rear. Steel groaned, hull plates buckled, and the once mighty vessel began its slow, inevitable descent. Panic and courage collided on deck, men struggled to rescue comrades, put out flames, and prevent the ship from sinking, all while the next threat silently approached from below. In the midst of the chaos, the ingenuity of the Japanese torpedo design became painfully evident. These were not crude weapons. They were precise, sophisticated machines capable of navigating complex underwater currents. They exploited the vulnerabilities of even the most heavily armored vessels, striking at weak points below the waterline. Damage control teams worked furiously, but each torpedo was a messenger of death, and many ships were doomed before help could arrive. The psychological toll on American sailors was as severe as the physical destruction. Fear of the unseen enemy haunted every mission, every patrol. The ocean, once a vast expanse for exploration and strategic maneuvering, had become a death trap. Even seasoned veterans, hardened by previous battles, found themselves trembling at the thought of another torpedo attack. Communication lines were disrupted as radios failed amid the explosions, leaving ships isolated, their crews forced to make split-second decisions under unimaginable pressure. Yet amid this devastation, stories of courage and sacrifice emerged. Some sailors refused to abandon sinking ships, fighting to save injured comrades and critical equipment. Officers gave themselves over to chaos, issuing commands that became lifelines for their men. American ingenuity responded to Japanese innovation. Crews learned to anticipate torpedo strikes, developed evasive maneuvers, and adapted to new threats. But each encounter reminded them that the Japanese underwater arsenal was a formidable opponent, one that had redefined naval warfare forever. Attacks were not random acts of violence, they were part of a calculated strategy. Japanese commanders understood the power of psychological warfare, knowing that the unpredictability of torpedo strikes could break morale faster than any surface engagement. By targeting key vessels, crippling leadership, and instilling fear, they sought to control the battlefield long before ships even sighted each other. The ocean itself became a battlefield dominated not by the visible, but by what lurked beneath. One particular incident highlighted the deadly efficiency of the torpedoes. A task force, moving to intercept Japanese supply lines, found themselves in a deadly trap. Submarines had silently shadowed the fleet for hours, calculating every angle, every movement. At the perfect moment, torpedoes were released, slicing through water with lethal speed. The impact was catastrophic. A destroyer was split in half, the bow of a cruiser disappeared beneath the waves, and the remaining vessels were thrown into disarray. Despite valiant counterattacks, the Japanese forces had already vanished beneath the surface, leaving destruction and bewilderment in their wake. The ripple effects of these attacks extended beyond immediate losses. Supply chains were disrupted, strategic positions became untenable, and confidence in previously secure waters eroded. Each strike served as a grim reminder of the power of underwater warfare and the human cost of naval dominance. Stories from survivors painted vivid pictures of heroism, desperation, and loss, men clinging to wreckage, sharing their last words, or risking everything to save fellow sailors. The torpedoes, silent and deadly, had become symbols of fear, strategy, and the ruthless efficiency of war. By the end of Part 1, it was clear that American forces faced an adversary whose mastery of underwater weaponry had changed the rules of engagement. Every mission required caution, foresight, and bravery. The war at sea was no longer about who had the biggest guns above water. It was about who controlled the unseen depths, who could strike first, and who could survive the terror lurking beneath the waves. The stage was set for a relentless struggle, one that would test the limits of courage, strategy, and human endurance in the deadliest theater of World War II. The ocean seemed to hold its breath, as if aware that the deadly game beneath its surface was far from over. American commanders, shaken by the relentless torpedo attacks, scrambled to adapt. Radar and sonar technology, once considered sufficient, had proven vulnerable to the stealth and ingenuity of Japanese submarines. Every ship, no matter how heavily armored, had become a potential target. The psychological weight of uncertainty pressed heavily on the sailors' shoulders. They could not see their enemy, could not predict when the next strike would come, and every creak of the hull or shadow beneath the waves could signal imminent doom. In response, the U.S. Navy began to innovate, developing countermeasures designed to detect and neutralize the torpedo threat. Convoy formations were adjusted, with smaller, faster ships deployed to guard larger capital ships. Depth charges were refined, deployed more strategically to flush out hidden submarines. Crews trained tirelessly, practicing evasive maneuvers and emergency protocols. Each vessel became both hunter and prey, a complex dance of survival where one mistake could mean annihilation. One of the most remarkable engagements occurred during a daring mission to intercept Japanese supply lines critical to the Pacific campaign. A task force of American destroyers and cruisers advanced cautiously, aware that Japanese submarines could be lying in wait beneath every swell. The water was deceptively calm, the night eerily silent, masking the deadly predators moving just below. Suddenly, the first torpedo struck, ripping through the hull of a cruiser with catastrophic force. Explosions lit the night sky, fires erupted, and sailors were thrown into the chaos. But this time, the American fleet had prepared. Evasive maneuvers were executed flawlessly, depth charges deployed with precision, and counterattacks were launched that forced the Japanese submarines to retreat. The battle raged for hours, a relentless clash of strategy and courage. Every torpedo launched by the Japanese was met with calculated resistance. Ships zigzagged to avoid incoming fire, sonar operators listened intently for the faintest signs of approaching threats, and officers issued commands with a blend of urgency and calm that inspired their crews to fight on. The ocean became a stage for human ingenuity, bravery, and the brutal reality of modern naval warfare. Amid the chaos, stories of heroism emerged that would be remembered for decades. Sailors risked their lives to save comrades from sinking ships, firefighters battled raging blazes while under threat of further attacks, and engineers worked tirelessly below decks to prevent catastrophic flooding. Some men faced impossible choices, abandoning one ship to save another, knowing that their actions might be their last. Every act of courage, every split-second decision, contributed to the survival of the fleet and the eventual turning of the tide. The Japanese forces, however, were not easily deterred. Their torpedoes continued to strike with deadly accuracy, exploiting gaps in formation and weaknesses in defense. Each engagement was a deadly chess match, a test of strategy, patience, and nerve. American forces learned quickly that adaptation was essential. Ships were reinforced, patrol patterns altered, and intelligence operations intensified to predict submarine movements. Slowly, the balance began to shift, as American commanders combined technology, strategy, and raw determination to counter the underwater threat. One notable encounter highlighted both the ingenuity of Japanese tactics and the resilience of American sailors. A carrier group, critical to maintaining air superiority, was targeted by a coordinated torpedo assault. Multiple submarines had positioned themselves to maximize impact, calculating angles and timing with precision. The first torpedo tore through a destroyer, sending debris and men into the dark waters. Fires erupted on the carrier deck, planes were damaged, and chaos spread across the fleet. But American crews responded with remarkable efficiency. Damage control teams contained fires, aircraft crews assisted in rescue efforts, and counterattacks forced the submarines to submerge and retreat. Though the cost was high, the fleet survived, demonstrating that courage, training, and adaptability could challenge even the most lethal weapons. The final phase of these deadly encounters saw the culmination of both innovation and heroism. American forces, having learned from countless attacks, coordinated large-scale operations to eliminate the submarine threat. Depth charges and sonar sweeps were employed with precision, patrol patterns became unpredictable, and air support was integrated to detect and attack submarines before they could launch their deadly torpedoes. Engagements were brutal, often lasting hours, testing the endurance of every sailor on deck and below. Yet through determination and ingenuity, the tide began to turn. In the end, these deadly encounters changed naval warfare forever. The torpedoes that once terrorized fleets became a catalyst for innovation, forcing both sides to evolve rapidly in tactics, technology, and strategy. Stories from survivors echoed through history, of bravery under fire, sacrifices made for comrades, and the relentless human spirit that refused to succumb to fear. Every explosion, every sinking ship, every narrow escape became part of a larger story, a story of determination, adaptation, and the unforgiving nature of war at sea. As the waves settled over the remnants of sunken ships, the sacrifices and courage of those involved were etched into history. The American Navy had faced an invisible, lethal adversary and emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient. The lessons learned, the strategies developed, and the heroism displayed would guide future generations, ensuring that the legacy of those deadly underwater torpedoes, and the sailors who confronted them, would never be forgotten. The story of those torpedoes, those sunken ships, and the men who faced them reminds us of the brutal reality of war and the unbreakable human spirit. In the darkest depths, beneath the silent surface, courage shone brighter than the explosions that tore ships apart. And though the ocean claimed many, it also witnessed acts of heroism that would echo through time, a testament to resilience, ingenuity, and the enduring fight for survival in the deadliest waters of history.